Today, in an apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, the world is quiet. It sounds like a 3-year-old boy, Jackson, playing on the floor. It sounds like a keyboard, as a best-selling author writes her next chapter. It's the quiet, private life of a wife, a mother, and a philanthropist. But just last night, the world was a roar. It was the sound of thousands of hands colliding, of bravas echoing to the rafters of the David H. Koch Theatre. It was the flash of 1,000 cameras capturing a final, tearful bow as golden glitter rained down on a living legend. After 25 years, an era had come to an end, and decades before that, the world was a different kind of quiet, a cold, desperate quiet. It was the sound of a door closing on a room at the Sunset Inn, a cheap motel in San Pedro, California. It was the sound of a young girl, one of 6 children, huddling on the floor, sharing a single pull-out bed, too shy to even speak in class. How does a person travel that impossible distance? How does a girl who didn't take her first ballet class until she was 13, living in poverty, become the most famous ballerina on earth? How did the child who was once told her body was too muscular, too short, and too wrong for an art form obsessed with uniformity end up as the first African-American principal dancer in the 75-year history of the American Ballet Theatre? And perhaps the most human question of all, after you have broken every barrier, achieved the impossible, and taken your final bow, what comes next? To understand the icon, we must first understand the survivor. Misty Copeland was born in Kansas City, Missouri, but her story truly begins in San Pedro, California. She was the 4th of 6 children, born to a mother, Sylvia Della Serna, who was bright and loving, but trapped in a cycle of difficult relationships and financial instability. Misty's childhood was not one of dance studios and private lessons. It was one of constant motion, but not of grace. The family moved constantly. Their home was, for long stretches, room Misty moved in with her teacher, Cynthia Bradley, and her family. For 3 years, she lived a life of intense focus and stability, a stark contrast to the chaos of her family's life. This created a rift. A painful public custody battle erupted. Misty, then just 15, filed for emancipation from her mother. It was a trauma that played out in the media. A young girl caught in a tug-of-war between the mother she loved and the future she craved. In the end, the emancipation was dropped. Misty returned to her mother, her heart fractured, but her will forged in steel. She had already had to fight for the right to even dance. The rest of the world would be easy by comparison. That fire, born from the motel rooms and the courtrooms, would soon set her path to New York City. In 2000, after a summer workshop, Misty Copeland was invited to join the American Ballet Theatre's studio company. A year later, in 2001, she became a member of the Corps de Ballet. Imagine for a moment what that felt like. She had made it. She was in the most prestigious ballet company in America. But the dream quickly revealed its harsh new reality. Misty was the only black woman in a Corps de Ballet of 80 dancers. The instability of her childhood was gone, replaced by the crushing loneliness of otherness. While the Corps is meant to be a sea of uniformity, she was, by definition, different. Critics and even some instructors focused on it. Her body, more athletic and curved, was not the rail-thin ideal the art form demanded. At 19, a lumbar stress fracture, a dreaded black line on an X-ray, sidelined her for a year. The time off, combined with the stress, led to a binge-eating disorder. She was told to lose weight. She was told she didn't fit. The shy girl from San Pedro was once again being told she did not belong. This was the grind. This was the long, unglamorous middle of the story. For years, she was just one dancer among 80, fighting her own body, fighting her own doubts, and fighting the silent, implicit bias of a 400-year-old European art form. She was, as she would later say, the only one. The pressure wasn't just to succeed for herself. It was to succeed so that she would not be the last one. But she had a support system. She had met a young lawyer, Olu Evans, in 2004. He became her anchor, a life partner completely outside the insular, high-pressure ballet world. He taught her to value her uniqueness, and she began slowly to lean into what made her different. She wasn't just a dancer, she was a powerhouse. In 2007, that power was finally recognized. She was promoted to the rank of soloist. It was a monumental achievement, but it was also just the beginning. The world had not yet seen what she was capable of. The real Ascent, the one that would change culture, was about to happen. The period after 2007 was when Misty Copeland transformed from a successful ballerina into a global phenomenon. She wasn't just rising, she was exploding. The art world began to wake up. Here was a soloist at ABT who danced with fire and an accessible, human power that audiences adored. She collaborated with the legendary musician Prince, appearing in his music video and joining him on tour. He, an icon who defied labels, recognized a fellow traveler. This partnership catapulted her out of the niche world of classical ballet and into the mainstream. Suddenly, people who had never seen a ballet knew her name. But the true cultural earthquake hit in 2014. Under Armour, a brand built on tough, muscular athletes, launched its "I Will What I Want" campaign. The centerpiece was a commercial featuring Misty. It was not a typical, ethereal ballet ad. It was raw. As she danced, a young girl's voice read a rejection letter reciting the lines, "You have the wrong body for ballet, you're too old." The ad went viral. It was seen by millions. It didn't just sell sportswear, it sold a story of resilience that resonated with everyone who had ever been told no. Misty Copeland became the face of perseverance. She was on the cover of Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people. She was no longer just in the culture, she was the culture. This was the peak of her fame, and it carried an almost unbearable pressure. Before her, a dancer's ultimate goal was to become a principal. But Misty was a household name before she'd been given the ultimate title. She was now a celebrity, a New York Times best-selling author for her memoir, Life in Motion, and a public speaker. And this created a profound tension. The world saw her as an icon, but the insular traditional ballet world still had one last, highest needle door for her to pass through. She was a soloist, performing principal roles and selling out the Metropolitan Opera House. Critics watched her with an intensity no other dancer faced. Every performance was a referendum, not just on her, but on whether a black woman, with her body and her story, truly belonged at the very top. She was on the cover of devastating. It wasn't one injury, it was six stress fractures running through her left tibia. The doctor showed her the dreaded black line on the scan. a fracture so severe, so deep, that many in the medical community believed it was career-ending. She was told she might never dance again. This was the tragedy. This was the night of the soul. Everything she had fought for, escaping the motel, the custody battle, the years in the Corps, the fight for body acceptance, was about to be taken away. Not by a critic, not by a director, but by her own body. This was the turning point. She had a choice. She could accept this fate, her body broken by the art form she loved, and retire as a celebrated soloist. Or she could fight. She chose to fight. She underwent a radical, complex surgery. A metal plate was fused to her tibia. The rehabilitation was grueling, a slow, painful process of rebuilding herself from the ground up. She was off the stage for 7 long months. The doubts were deafening. Would she come back the same? Would she come back at all? She did. She returned, not just as the same dancer, but as a stronger one. The metal in her leg was a permanent reminder of the steel in her spine. And the company, seeing this unbreakable will, knew. 2 years later, after her triumphant comeback, she danced Swan Lake, the most iconic role in ballet. And on June 30th, 2015, the announcement came. Misty Copeland was being promoted. She was, after 75 years, the first African-American woman to become a principal dancer at the American Ballet Theatre. The motel room, the custody battle, the loneliness, the fractures, it all led to this. She had not just broken a barrier, she had shattered it. Achieving the dream is one thing, living with it is another. For the next several years, Misty Copeland lived as the very thing everyone said was impossible. She was a reigning principal dancer, a symbol and an icon all at once. The pressure did not stop, it simply changed. But she had also cultivated a life beyond the stage lights. In 2016, she married her longtime love, Olu Evans, the man who had been her anchor through the entire storm. Their life together was, by design, private. It was her sanctuary from the demands of being a public figure. She continued to expand her voice, not just through movement, but through words. She wrote best-selling children's books, like Firebird and Bunheads, creating stories so that young children of color could see themselves in the art form. And then in 2022, she embraced her most personal role. She and her husband welcomed their first child, a son named Jackson. For the first time, ballet was not the center of her universe. Motherhood was. She took a 5-year hiatus from the ABT stage. The world wondered if she was done. But this wasn't a tragic fall. It was a chosen evolution. This was the quiet after the storm. She was healing her body, raising her son, and building her next act. In 2021, she launched the Misty Copeland Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to bringing ballet to underserved communities, making it affordable and accessible, a direct line from her own beginning at the Boys and Girls Club. And then in the fall of 2025, she announced she would return to the stage one last time. A farewell of iron, a pain tolerance, and an unshakable belief that she had a right to be there. Misty Copeland's final bow was not an end. It was a reverence, a deep bow of gratitude. She is no longer just a principal dancer, she is an architect. The girl who once had no home of her own is now building one for the generation that will follow. ensuring that the future of ballet looks a little more like the world we all live in.